Room 2041 of the Rayburn House office building had hosted its fair share of drama over the years. Budget battles, high-profile testimonies, political theater. But this day felt different, not dramatic in the usual performative sense. No grandstanding, no shouting, just a heavy silence, the kind that creeps in just before something breaks. Chief Justice John Roberts sat alone at the witness table, surrounded by dark wood, microphones, and an audience of lawmakers and press. His tailored navy suit clung perfectly to his frame, a quiet symbol of control. Not arrogance necessarily, but certainly self-assurance. He had been here before. Congress wasn't unfamiliar territory, and the rhythms of testimony were second nature by now. Answer only what you must, never reveal more than needed, stay above reproach. Still, today wasn't about legal theory or constitutional interpretation. This wasn't an academic debate. The subject that brought him here was something far more uncomfortable: judicial ethics. In recent months, pressure had mounted from the public and lawmakers alike. Questions lingered about gifts, connections, friendships that crossed professional lines, about cases heard by justices with undisclosed ties to people who stood to benefit. There had always been whispers, but now the whispers were headlines, and cameras captured every blink, every shift in the chair. The hearing had started calmly enough. Members of the committee took their turns. Some asked procedural questions. Others danced carefully around pointed topics, clearly wary of stepping too hard on the judiciary's toes. It was a performance mostly. Respectful disagreement, controlled frustration, nothing outside the bounds of decorum. But the tension remained. It hovered like humidity in the room, thick and pressing. Everyone knew something or someone was going to push things off script. They just didn't know when. Then her name was called. Representative Jasmine Crockett, you have the floor. Some heads turned. Not everyone was familiar with her. A freshman congresswoman from Texas, former public defender, not a household name yet, but those who did know her reputation knew she wasn't one to pull punches. She adjusted her microphone, leaned in slightly, not enough to be dramatic, but enough to signal she was here with purpose. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, she began, voice calm and measured. No fanfare, no raised voice, just a certain weight in her tone that commanded attention. Chief Justice Roberts gave her the kind of smile practiced by men in high places. Measured, polite, condescending in the subtlest way. It was the expression of someone who expected to be challenged, but not threatened. A man who believed he knew how to weather any storm. But Crockett didn't come to spar. She came to confront. Chief Justice, she said smoothly, you've stated in previous remarks that even without an enforceable code, the court holds itself to high ethical standards. That right? Roberts didn't hesitate. That is correct, Congresswoman. The justices adhere to long-standing principles of judicial conduct, even in the absence of a formal code. She nodded, flipped a tab in her folder. Nothing theatrical, just methodical. Then help me understand, she said, her tone still even. If that's the case, why was there no disclosure of a justice's relationship with a major political donor who had a case before the court last year? The room tensed. You could hear the faint click of a pen dropping somewhere near the back. Cameras shifted, eyes narrowed. Robert sat up straighter, a subtle tell. I'm not at liberty to discuss specific relationships or ongoing reviews. Understood, Crockett interrupted without raising her voice. But we're not discussing hypotheticals. We're talking about a matter of public record, disclosure forms submitted, or in this case, not submitted. He adjusted his tie, the first visible crack in the veneer. Congresswoman, those forms are compiled by administrative staff and reviewed internally. The court takes transparency seriously. Crockett leaned in a touch more, her voice still steady. But do you personally verify them? He paused, briefly, too briefly to be obvious, but enough for the attentive to notice. She didn't wait for a full answer. Because the standard you've mentioned, appearance of impropriety, that's not just a legal concept, is it? It's an ethical benchmark, one your court has historically used. Not just what is wrong, but what looks wrong to the public. Representative Crockett didn't lean back. She didn't let up. Her calm demeanor remained intact, but there was a precision to her tone now, a slow tightening, like a noose being drawn with each carefully chosen word. Chief Justice, she continued, eyes locked on Roberts, you said just moments ago that the court is mindful of public trust. And yet, when asked directly about reviewing disclosures, documents intended specifically for public Transparency. You offered a delegation of responsibility, not a direct answer. Roberts kept his expression neutral, but his fingers shifted slightly against each other, folding and unfolding, a quiet tick that hadn't been there minutes ago. The administrative staff oversees the technical aspects of disclosures, he replied. It would be inappropriate for me to comment on filings related to individual justices. Crockett raised an eyebrow. With all due respect, Chief Justice, you're not just any justice. You're the one tasked with leading the court, setting its tone, and right now, that tone seems to suggest that a lack of accountability is perfectly acceptable. A soft murmur spread along the row of press at the back of the room. One camera light blinked on, brighter than the rest. Someone was live streaming now. Let's talk precedent, she continued, because I know how much the court values it. You're familiar, I assume, with Caperton vs. A.T. Massey Coal Company, 2009? Roberts nodded slowly. Yes, that case dealt with judicial recusal. Exactly. The majority opinion, authored by Justice Kennedy, if I recall correctly, held that due process requires recusal when there's a serious risk of actual bias, or even the appearance of it, stemming from a justice's financial or personal interest in a case. Roberts replied carefully. That was a specific case involving extraordinary financial involvement. Crockett didn't miss a beat. And what would you call a justice vacationing on a private yacht multiple times with a billionaire whose company later appears before the court? Is that ordinary financial involvement? The silence this time was sharp. He adjusted his position slightly, speaking in that slow, lawyerly cadence that masks discomfort under layers of civility. As I mentioned, Congresswoman, I won't comment on individual situations without a full record. Ethics matters are complex, nuanced. They are, Crockett agreed, but public confidence? That's not nuanced. That's either earned or lost. She flipped to another tab in her binder. You know what's also complex? The fact that the federal judiciary is the only branch of government without a binding, enforceable code of ethics. The executive has one, Congress has one, but your institution relies on what? Professional courtesy? Roberts' voice dropped into something even more measured. There is ongoing internal discussion regarding the formalization of standards. The court is considering, Crockett echoed. How long has it been considering? 5 years? 10. He didn't answer, not directly. Look, she said, and this time her tone softened, not out of pity, but gravity. I'm not here to score political points. I'm not interested in viral clips. What I am interested in is this. Why should the public believe in the integrity of a system that holds itself to a lower standard than the people who serve under it? Roberts finally looked up from his notes. The integrity of the judiciary rests not on headlines or hearsay, but on centuries of tradition, independence, and judgment. That is what preserves our democracy. Tradition? She asked. Or immunity from scrutiny. That one stung. A few members of the committee leaned forward now, more alert than before. The energy in the room had shifted yet again. It wasn't just Crockett asking questions anymore. She had tapped into something larger, an unspoken frustration, a public undercurrent now given voice. She glanced down at her notes, then set them aside entirely. You've often said that the court should not be swayed by popular opinion, that it must remain impartial even in the face of criticism. That's correct, Roberts affirmed, but being impartial and being unaccountable are not the same thing. You know that. We all do. Another pause. Roberts nodded slightly as though conceding the point, at least intellectually. The court takes its role seriously, Congresswoman, he said, the edge in his voice faint but detectable. We are not above scrutiny, but we are not subject to political winds either. No, she replied, but you are subject to the Constitution, and the Constitution gives Congress the authority to oversee and, if necessary, legislate the framework by which the court operates. We can't tell you how to rule, but we can ensure that how you rule and how you live while doing so is transparent to the people you serve. For the first time, Roberts didn't respond immediately. He took a breath, not a dramatic sigh, not a frustrated inhale, just a pause, as though weighing whether to push back or pivot. The gavel hadn't struck, her time hadn't run out, but she leaned back slightly now, offering him space. Her eyes didn't leave his. I'm done for now, she said quietly, but I'm not finished. The air in room 2041 had gone still again, not with boredom, but with breathless attention. Jasmine Crockett's words lingered in the space every like corner static, of the chamber. Clinging to the Chief Justice of the United States, a man who had built a career on remaining unshaken, looked, if not rattled, then certainly aware that something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't accustomed to being challenged like this, not in this setting, not without the cushion of reverence that usually wrapped itself around members of the highest court, and certainly not by a first-term congresswoman from Texas Texas who refused to play by the usual script. The chairman cleared his throat, ready to move on, but Roberts raised a finger slightly, an uncharacteristic break from protocol. "Mr. Chairman," he said, voice still even, "if I may respond briefly." The chairman gave a small nod. Roberts turned back toward Crockett, his tone now more deliberate. Not defensive, yet clearly more aware of the eyes, the cameras, and the implications. "Congresswoman, I understand your concerns, truly," he said, "and while I cannot address individual filings or specific relationships without due process, I want to make one thing very clear. This court, my court, has never taken its responsibility lightly. Our independence is what protects this democracy, but independence cannot mean isolation." Crockett raised her chin slightly. She didn't smile. She listened. Roberts continued, "We have discussed internally the possibility of formalizing a code of ethics. Those discussions are ongoing, and I assure you they are more than symbolic, but change within the judiciary, by design, moves slowly. That is both a strength and perhaps in this case, a flaw." It wasn't a full concession, but it was more than anyone had expected. Crockett didn't jump at it. She didn't twist the moment to score a victory. Instead, she nodded once. "Change may move slowly, Chief Justice," she replied, "but trust erodes fast. And right now, the public isn't looking for perfect rulings or flawless justices. They're looking for proof that you're not above the same principles you demand from them: honesty, transparency, accountability." There was a pause. Less tense this time, more contemplative. Another committee member leaned toward their microphone, ready to move the hearing along, but Crockett wasn't finished. Not yet. "One last thought," she said, "is this institution you protect. It doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to the robes, or to the marble halls, or to the legal elite. It belongs to the people. And if they're losing faith, that's not their failure. That's yours." Roberts didn't speak again. He didn't need to. The stillness in his posture said enough. Not defeat, but reflection. A man for once, not holding court, but being held to it. The chairman moved things forward, calling the next name on the witness list. The rhythm of the hearing resumed, but the air hadn't quite returned to normal. A few heads were still turned toward Crockett, a few others toward Roberts, now more subdued in his composure. Outside the hearing room, reporters prepared their headlines, not about grand revelations or bombshell evidence, but about a shift, a moment, a reckoning. And as Crockett gathered her notes and leaned back in her chair, she didn't smile or whisper to her colleagues. She simply watched, eyes forward, knowing that she hadn't just questioned the Chief Justice. She had reminded him and everyone else who the real judge was. By the time Chief Justice Roberts stepped out of room 2041, the heat of the cameras had become almost physical. Flashes burst like white sparks across his path as aides cleared the way. He didn't stop for questions. He didn't need to. He knew the clips would speak louder than any post-hearing statement. Some of his defenders would say he handled it with grace, that he maintained composure under pressure, that he kept the judiciary above the political fray. But others, especially those tuning in from outside the DC Beltway, weren't buying it, because what they saw wasn't just another hearing. It was a moment of rare accountability, not a gotcha, not a takedown, something heavier. Inside the Capitol, staffers traded murmurs in elevators and corridors. "Did you see Crockett?" She didn't blink once. Roberts never saw it coming. On social media, the exchange went viral within an hour. A clipped video of Crockett calmly citing precedent while Roberts tightened his tie was replayed across networks. Analysts debated its implications. Ethics professors weighed in. Some called it grandstanding, others called it historic. And yet, beneath all the noise, something quieter began to shift. If you like this video, then subscribe.